Good evening. I'd like to call this Thursday, September 24th meeting of the Tacoma School District Board of Directors to order. Would the General Counsel please call the roll?
Yes, good evening. President Cobb. Vice President Bonbright.
Present.
Director Leon.
Here.
And Director Keating.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. So moving on to item number 3, adoption of the agenda. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
I so move.
Is there a second?
I second.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is adopted. Item number 4, Superintendent's Report, 4.1, Bond and Tax Update.
So
Great, thank you.
I know that Rosalind's here and she'll give out. She's brought some visitors also. Thanks, Rosalind.
Hi, thank you. Tom, if you could pull up the presentation that's on the agenda. So we prepared a brief review for you this evening of our bond and tax update. Just to give you some general context this evening on the board agenda, you will see a resolution to approve the allowance for Carla and I to go sell these bonds. And so if you'll go to the next slide for me. This is just a draft timeline of what we can expect to see over the next several weeks. We are moving rather swiftly. Right now, we're in the process of updating our preliminary offering statement, which is the document that goes out to our investors that tells them about our organization and tells them about our financial situation so that investors can make informed decisions about whether or not to invest in Tacoma School District bonds. Tonight, we'll hopefully have the resolution approved. We did have a ratings call with Moody's yesterday, and we will be having an S&P ratings call tomorrow. And I think I have a quick note on here about our ratings. And then our final POS will be posted on October 13th. I think our pricing will be somewhere around the 21st. And then finally on November 2nd, we have a closing. So that is a fast timeline. If you'll go to that next slide for me, Tom. Just a quick overview of how we got to this point. Resolution 2065 back in October of 2019 was approved by the board, and that allowed us to put a ballot measure on the February of 2020 ballot. And that ballot measure asked for $535 million to be issued for replacement, refurbishment, and repair of buildings and many different types of systems spanning across the entire district. And just as a note, the issuance of the bonds was not to exceed 25 years of maturity. That voter approved ballot measure in February of 2020 made approval with 68.57% of the votes of our constituency that participated in the election, the special election. So that's how we got to tonight. We are now issuing the bonds that the voters approved back in February. In addition, just as a note, because I know it seems like we just did this, and that's because we did, in resolutions 2075 and 2086, just a month and a half ago or so, we authorized to do a refunding of our current debt. So that was the debt that we experienced. That debt has nothing to do with the $535 million bonds that we're about to issue. And I'm just sending that as a note to say, I know we've just done this. I know this seems familiar and that's fantastic. But for the general public, that's something that we're setting aside. And now we're working on a completely different issuance. You'll go to that next slide for me, please. So we've worked over the last several months to select a team to participate on this. We have underwriters. We're working with RBC, Royal Bank of Canada, as well as Citibank or Citigroup. And we have bond counsel. We had a bond counsel who retired, and so we had to go out and select a new bond counsel. Very excited to tell you that we've selected Foster Garvey. They're on the call with us this evening to help answer any questions that come up as we work through the resolution. And then we have financial advisor Fred Eoff on the call with us as well to do the same. And Fred Eoff works with PFM, and he's worked with us for a number of years now. This is a really amazing team that we are fortunate to be part of. On the district side of things, Rob Bryant and I, he's the director of finance, have been working diligently trying to make sure that we have all of our I's dotted and T's crossed, as well as the superintendent who's providing us with all the leadership and guidance that's necessary for this type of significant activity. I also want to say that we're working this time with our Puget Sound Educational Service District, so we've been in contact with them relating to this. We did look at the plan and talked about the different scenario options and some of the structure of the bonds that we're considering. And we did that yesterday with our Citizens Finance and Audit Committee. We do plan to issue up to $535 million. And what I mean by up to is, while we have $535 million of bonds available, we really do want to find what's most advantageous. We're not desperate to get all of that money initially, but we do have an opportunity to get better interest rates potentially. And so if we can achieve better interest rates and better savings for our Tacoma taxpayers, then we will issue the full amount of those bonds as necessary. The resolution would allow us to issue either taxable or tax exempt. And typically we would issue tax exempt municipality or municipal bonds simply because they've offered a more cost-effective manner for our issuances. But the market is very interesting these days. As you can imagine, you've seen very interesting things everywhere you are. So the market is no different than what's happening everywhere else in the world. I already mentioned the maturities of no longer than 25 years. What it appears with the estimates right now is that we will have borrowing costs somewhere between 2 to 3%. And we intend to complete the sale before the election, not for political reasons, but simply because we believe it'll provide us the greatest market stability. And if you'll do one more slide for me. Thank you. I know that this is difficult to see, and I know that this is on the board agenda, so anybody following along might be able to zoom into it a little bit better. But what you'll find on this chart are our historical tax rates on the top, the 10 years on the left. And those tax rates represent what we have been paying for all of our debt service. This is our debt service only. That's not true. I'm so sorry. These are all of our tax rates. I can't see it. That's the problem. Let me zoom in. There we go. Now I can see it. So the dark blue column represents our maintenance and operations levy. The green bars would represent future capital technology levy. We're anticipating that the $24 million in capital levy that we offer now would continue forward in future years. The red is our current capital projects levy. My printer decided to turn on. I think someone's printing at home. Sorry. And so then the blue would represent the current debt that we have. I'm sorry, the purple. The purple would represent the current debt that we have, and then the teal color represents our future debt that we're anticipating incorporating in. You'll see the volatility in the last 10 years of our tax rates. You know, a number of things have happened. We had a fiscal crisis with the Great Depression, round two. And so our tax rates skyrocketed when we lost assessed value. And then over the last couple of years, we've had some blips, things like the state has changed the way we're able to collect our maintenance and operations levy over the last 2 years. And so those fluctuations have impacted our tax rate pretty dramatically. Our anticipation is that we would be able to keep a level tax rate for the next several years with a level to declining tax rate over the course of 25 years. So this is the tax rate impact that you might anticipate seeing if the resolution were to go to sale and all of our hopeful expectations were met. And those are the slides that I prepared for you this evening, and I'm happy to take any questions that you might have on this and on the resolution.
Thank you, Rosalind. So are there questions, members of the board? I can't see you all right now. I can see you at the bottom of my screen, but I'll just go through the list. Director Bonbright, do you have questions or comments for Ms. Medina?
I actually
I don't, because we had an in-depth conversation yesterday with the Audit and Finance Committee, so I think I understand it pretty clearly. So I'll let somebody else ask.
Director Keating?
I don't have any questions.
Thank you. And Director Leon?
Just not a question, but I understand the implications for selling before the election. It seems like things could significantly become unstable in a way that could hurt us. So that's, I mean, in a way it's political because there's going to be a political election. What is stable before the election? So,
Fair enough.
thanks.
Just building off of what Director Leon just asked, my question was going to be, historically, are there fluctuations in markets aligned with every election in general? Like, is that pivot point in time, whether it's continuation of leadership or a change in leadership, historically, are there fluctuations that you can expect to see in markets that are aligned to elections generally?
We saw that in the last presidential election. There was a bit of strange activity in the market, but I think from our perspective, we're looking at it from we need to start issuing bonds so that we can begin building the projects that we anticipate building, and our timeline is between now and November that we need to access those funds. And so if we're looking at that short window of time that we need to get the bonds out there, that's where the comment comes, that would be the most stable period for us to go and seek.
You don't want to start it and then end it you don't want to cross that threshold in terms of,
Right.
Okay. And then lastly, my other question was about rates and the taxable versus tax exempt markets. How far are they right now? I feel like when we were having a conversation about the bond refinancing, it seemed like there was a significant advantage from going to the taxable market. How are those differences looking these days?
I would love to have Fred, if Fred's on, because he's got his finger on the pulse probably better than I would. I don't know if you're on.
Well,
Hi.
I am here. I haven't been able to plug onto the video, but I am online. And what we have in the market right now is a vastly narrower differential between tax exempt rates and taxable rates than would normally be the case. And it's so it does give us some of the opportunity to create some interesting structures here that prove to be advantageous to the district over the long term. I would say that differential between taxable and tax exempts is in many cases inside 0.5% from between the two, and in the very short maturities, even less than that.
Thank you. Any final questions or comments from members of the board? Okay. Thank you, Ms. Medina.
Thank you so much.
Okay, moving on to item 4.2. We can get back up there. School year start update.
So the school year updates in the beginning of school continues to be challenging. And I'm sure that we have lots of our public and audience that have experienced that. I'm going to do two things. Three things. Talk about what's currently happening, giving you a little bit of some successes and challenges, and then let you know what's on the horizon. So we're currently operating in full remote mode in our schools with two configurations. We've got about 4,000 students plus in a fully online configuration, with our remaining students participating in remote learning. And some of the support for our remote system includes live and recorded training for educators. That's been fascinating if you haven't seen it. Support for our families and students through online live and recorded webinars, recorded TV lessons for students in grades 1, 2, and 3, which can be viewed on Tacoma TV and YouTube. And then also we've done a distribution of supplies for PK through 12. And that was a great way for some schools to get to see their teachers and stay socially distanced, but at least have a little bit of a relationship. We so remain committed to following the guidelines from Dr. Chen. And I know we continually get emails where people say, what are you doing and why? And I just want you to know that we want our students and our staff to be safe, and we're committed to a slow re-entry of students with strict adherence to the safety guidelines. And some things I'm going to tell you later are, again, due to that safety guidelines. We're looking at social distancing, attestations to determine health, cleaning protocols, mask protocols. Those are all different pieces of what we're doing. We've had a lot of questions about cleaning and what's different about the cleaning. So I asked our COO, Chris Williams, just to do a little brief report of what the cleaning protocol looks like. So Chris, would you talk about that for a second?
Yes. So I just wanted to provide the board and the public an update on our cleaning procedures and products. And I also want to emphasize that we have worked closely with the Tacoma-Pierce County Health Department, and we are following the recommendations and guidelines when it comes to cleaning products and procedures. So what are we doing different? We're really focused on high touch point areas and disinfecting daily. What does that mean? Pre-COVID-19 era, a lot of our tasks were either done daily, bi-weekly, weekly, or as required. So we're focused on daily disinfecting high touch point areas. What are high touch point areas? They consist of tables, doorknobs, handrails, desks, faucets, sinks, classroom chairs, interior windows, bathrooms. We're going to be disinfecting classroom floors daily, as well as vacuum cleaning daily. In addition to that, we will be providing every classroom in the district with disinfectant spray. It's a 3M product that is called 25A. It's recommended by the health department. It's actually being utilized across the nation in hospitals. And at the conclusion of every school day, we will be spraying down classroom desks, chairs, and tables with this disinfectant spray. In addition to that, we will be providing schools with disinfecting wipes. They're going to be utilized for our teachers and staff where they can wipe down surfaces as needed. Also, we had some lessons learned from March, and Rosin's team, procurement team, has been great. We've been overstocking on supplies. I know it was challenging for a lot of districts, a lot of industries. So we want to be prepared in case we don't want the district to be put in a position where we don't have supplies. So they've been tremendous at working with us in procuring additional supplies. I would tell you that we have a wonderful custodial staff. We have wonderful leadership with Tom Chalk, and that team is overly committed to ensuring that we will have safe and clean facilities when students actually arrive. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. That's good. That's great information. Just a couple of, I just want to give a couple of additional successes. Thank you to our paras and our bargaining team. We have a 2021 para-educator MOU around displaced para-educators, and our HR operations team has already moved into action by posting vacancies and quickly assigning displaced paras to ensure that we have adequate support in the buildings and that affected paras have their assignments finalized in a timely manner. So that is a great celebration. Our principals and teachers are reporting high attendance and high engagement in both of our different school platforms. And we've had a great response from some parents regarding classroom activities by teachers through Microsoft Teams and Schoology. We've got 108 substitutes. We're still going to need substitutes. Teachers are still going to have issues and need leave during this time. So we have 108 teachers that have been substitutes that have been trained on Microsoft Teams. And we have had incredible support from our partners. We'll have to have a report to you from Amanda Scott Thomas to talk to you about some of the things that our partners have stepped forward to do. And we had a great presentation to Gates a couple of days ago to talk about the success of how Tacoma has come together with their partners through COVID. So that was an excellent time to show what we've done. Our PIO office has really been working like crazy to send out a variety of messages to a variety of stakeholders when we've had constantly changing directives. So thank you to Dan and his team. Our tech team has deployed over 19,200 laptops to grades 3 through 12, and we are still anticipating that we'll get those laptops for our K-2 kiddos. We're serving about 1,000 students meals every day, and we continue to process students on the Tacoma online waitlist. And we'll continue to, we really are going to continue to work to extend communication. So that doesn't mean everything's been perfect. As always, we've certainly had challenges. And I really want the public to know that we hear you. We're looking at the letters. We're paying attention. We have an FAQ. So, we are working with those challenges. One of the things is we continue to fight cyber attacks from outside sources, not inside, but outside, that are coming in and interrupting some of our classroom programming. The supply chain for computer devices and hotspots is problematic. The guidance from our health department, OSPI, and LNI continue to change, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And also, our time to support, we need additional time to really support the changing needs and requests as we get to Tacoma Online. So we really are trying to address day-to-day labor concerns, and also paying attention to our enrollment fluctuations. So all those contribute to a lot of moving parts. And thank you to all the staff that is really, really working with that. Also, one of the things that's happened is when we get, I've talked about how we stick to that guidance, and sometimes that guidance changes and it comes from a different place, and that has been problematic, and that's the case here. I think everybody knows we planned for a reentry on Monday, the 28th, to face-to-face instruction for a limited amount of students, just preschool, our kindergarten students, and some self-contained special education students that would come to the campus. And, the reason for that is because we really have a heightened sensitivity that our youngest learners continue to face that digital divide. They don't have a computer. And so until we can close that, we really want them to cautiously and safely start with our students. So that's why it's just been in the last 2 days, and I think our public has already gotten the notice that we've had changes based on the guidance that we've gotten. And first thing I want to do is acknowledge that we know how hard it is. I can't imagine how hard it is for our families to go through these changes. I mean, how many times do you have to tell your second grader, tomorrow's the first day of school, and then it's not, or whatever. And so I want to acknowledge how difficult we understand it is for our families, and know that our first priority has been safety, and that's why we adhere to these changes in guidance. I also want you to know that it's difficult for our employees in our organization who work hard and keep working to support that guidance. And then when it changes, it makes it difficult for all of us. So I'm just going to read the statement from Dan, and then if you have questions, I'm going to ask Josh to kind of focus in on the mask issue. And this is a mask issue. That's our next thing we're going through. So schools district-wide, school districts, everybody in the state received clarified guidance this week from the State Department of Labor and Industries around the types of personal protective masks required for school employees who work in schools with students. We have also discovered that during safety testing of our N95 masks, so we did have some and we were ready with some, they're not passing the safety standards that have been issued for these masks. In addition, we have learned that more information from Labor and Industries pertinent to school operations may come out the week of September 28th. So that means there's something new coming, but we don't know what it is. As a result of those issues, we want to delay the start of in-person instruction until we receive and understand any new information that can ensure the safety of our staff and students. Please know that is a difficult decision. Again, we know it's hard for you, it's hard for our employees, but for Tacoma Public Schools, this clarified guidance from LNI means school-based staff members must wear a higher level of personal protective masks than previously planned for and communicated. And we also now have a requirement for a significant number of staff members due to their roles who have to be trained and fitted with an N95 mask. I had no idea about that. My son works with asbestos. He said, Mom, of course, you have to be fitted, you have to be trained, and they have to test your mask. So I learned a lot from him. So anyway, these groups of employees and nurses, health clerks, special education teachers, paraeducators, and custodians are going to need these high protective masks that are called N95. And we need to teach them how to safely and properly take care of them. And so that's going to take longer than Monday. So we've already contracted with a training and fitting vendor to begin that process. And I know you've heard this too many times, but we'll keep you totally informed about how we go. Josh, did I cover everything about the mask? Do you have anything else that you want to add?
Just for those folks that are employees and at home, we are not suggesting that all of our employees are wearing N95 masks. There are certain tasks that have been identified by labor and industry. As we've been working to get those employees fitted, some of those masks have failed as part of the testing. And so we have a responsibility to ensure that the right employee has the right mask for the right task. And that's going to be the continued challenge of there. So our staff has been working with both local L&I as well as state L&I. We've been in close contact with OSPI. This is not unique to the Tacoma Public Schools. It's a challenge that's surfacing all over the state as school districts bring folks back on. And some folks may say, well, what's happening in that district and why are they able to do that? Well, there are certain tasks where different employees need these masks. We're following the letter of the law with L&I and to make sure that those are there. So not all employees will be wearing this mask. So I don't want anyone to be at home thinking all of our staff will be wearing them. It is for tasks that have been deemed necessary. So I thought you did a great job, Superintendent. Just clarifiers.
Thank you. So we'll keep you informed. We'll let you know what's going on. We're waiting eagerly for the, I called the superintendent of our local ESD and asked him what's going on, what's the next step, and he's not sure either. So we'll wait eagerly for Monday or Tuesday to get further guidance. And in the meantime, we're getting our employees that we know are going to have that role that have to wear the N95. We're getting them ready. We're getting them send in their health sheets so they can come back. And we definitely will start fitting those masks and we'll figure out which ones we have that are passing the test. So I apologize and I regret so much this step because it's hard on our families and hard on our employees, but we will do the best that we can as we go through. Questions?
Thank you, Superintendent. Are there questions from members of the board? Director Bondwright?
Yes, I had been under the understanding that we actually had enough masks and N95 masks to handle the load, but apparently some of them are failing. So I'm just wondering, Superintendent and Deputy Superintendent, whether or not we are going to need to partner or do we have availability somewhere in the community where we can get these masks, or what is the and then we obviously are going to need backups for when time. So I'm just wondering where we are on our supply for the N95s.
So we're getting daily shipments in. We currently have enough to meet our needs in there in our schools. The assessments that are taking place are done by an independent contractor to determine fit test. And so when we say fail, there may not be the right mask for each individual employee is there. So you have to continue to try new ones on. And then L&I has recently connected with us to say that the contractor needs to do a different type of assessment. So it keeps on changing and the opportunity. So the short answer is that's why we had to stop. That's why we had to say we're not ready and to be in a place, but we have enough. The procurement team has done an amazing job of securing N95 masks as well as other surgical disposable masks and all the PPEs. It's now to ensure that they are the right fit. Do they meet the right threshold? And then as the superintendent merely mentioned is this new guidance is coming out next week. And we really do need to see what does that mean for the different employee groups.
So that was actually my follow-up question was, okay, so we've got this targeted population of staff that are have specific jobs, roles that are going to be required to have an N95. Do we have, or has L&I put out any specific requirements on teachers or general staff that are not in those categories, what types of masks they should have, or and then do we have those in place, or are teachers going to be able to make and wear their own masks, or where are we on that?
So that's another great question. So the guidance is supposed to clarify that for educators. So most of the LNI guidance is not typically for educators because this is a new world, right? In the sense of different kinds of masks. So they are putting out education specific guidance. Supposedly we have not seen it. That's been the message to all of us in education that'll come out next week. Our procurement team has done an amazing job of making sure that we have enough masks for moderate jobs, would be your typical teaching in there. Those would not be cloth masks. Those would be your blue surgical masks. And we do have enough of those and we are constantly ordering, but to start us off. So we had enough, we've always had enough, but we now have to make sure that we pause and make sure that it's the right masks in there. We also do have cloth masks. And so if the guidance comes out and says cloth masks, we'll have enough cloth masks to start as well.
So, and the other thing I think it's important that the public knows is that there are other school districts that are going to start on Monday. And as I talk to my colleagues and superintendents, some are saying, hey, we're going to go ahead because we don't have, that many personnel in a specific role. So I just want our public to know that there may be, that it's easy to look at another school and say, hey, they're going to school, why isn't Tacoma going to school? So it's because we have more of those higher risk employees in a role where they need a mask. And so there's going to be lots of different reasons why districts make a choice. And again, we are all kind of moving forward on faith because we don't know what it's going to look like come Monday or Tuesday with the guidance.
I think the only other thing I would just want folks at home to know is that we're still committed to, we might have students come in as we're able to, staff are able to have the proper PPEs and they fit. We'll probably have some rolling starts. We're very dedicated and committed to bringing our special education self-contained students back on campus as soon as we possibly can. So we will be working aggressively to ensure that we're able to provide the safe PPEs that fit appropriately for the staff. And then all the bus routes are ready. Everything else is ready. So at that point, we're able to start rolling those students back onto campus in a rolling start fashion.
Thank you. Are there questions from Director Keating? I'll go to you next.
Yeah, Vice President Bonbright asked several of my questions already around masks. One question I have in regards to the special ed, because my understanding is there are some students and staff that are on campuses already. Have they had to stop until there's equipment? How has that population been impacted by this new news?
Yep, as you well know, Director Keating, each individual education plan in each of those students is unique. And like all of our students, we have an individual education plan. There may not be a requirement that staff needs to wear a N95. So we will be examining that. Remember, the superintendent said this new guidance clarity has come out on certain roles. So if we have to pause, we'll have to pause. We'll be doing that examination again tomorrow for those each individuals. But there may be situations where they don't have to pause. And so the message to them will be is, no, you don't have to pause. And we'll continue forward with that commitment to bring and support those students the best we can.
Okay. Rosalind and I were talking today about transportation. So the public may see some buses out on routes because they may have some students that they're transporting that don't, that have a teacher that doesn't need that extra, protection. And so you're right. There will be some kids getting rides to school because they're still able to do that.
And then I just had two other questions. One, I was curious what the wait list for the Tacoma Online students is. I know that number, in emails, we've seen a wide fluctuation of assumed numbers. And so I was wondering if there could be clarity on that. And then my other question is around enrollment numbers. Like do we have what our enrollment numbers are for this school year at this time.
We can get you the exact number of Tacoma Online numbers and give that to you. I do have some good news though, is we've been trying to prioritize, especially kindergarten, first and second graders, because those were the ones that were scheduled to be on campuses first off the wait list. And those families, the current wait list as of this morning, we're all going to be able to be processed to start early next week. So there was enough room and capacity to them. So we'll see how that continues to evolve. Families may make that choice and we'll have a rolling wait list based off of capacity. And then the secondary students would follow after. But if you are on the Tacoma Online wait list as a kindergarten or first grader, you should be hearing some news in the next 48 hours for you to be able to start those classes.
Thank you.
Director Leon.
Yeah, I think it's just important for the public to understand. I think these different tasks, people are wondering, well, what could those be? And you can elaborate more, Superintendent, but I think that, some special education students may not be able to maintain a mask themselves. That would cause another paraeducator or teacher to have to need an N95, or they may need to pick them up physically, wheelchair, or get in really close contact. There may be secretions or something that someone may expel. So that's probably part of the reason everybody needs different sizes, different, the mask has to be important. I'm just going to demonstrate for the public. I think that they should see that these come in different shapes and sizes, and these are only 2 of probably 6 types we've seen in the medical arena. And this one is actually a little too small for me. So this one fits properly, and there's lots of different other types, and they have these bands that go around and are tight around your face. Some of them break prematurely. Sometimes you can't get them snug. So I think it's more complex than just slapping something on your face. So just so the public understands how difficult it is. And when you put it on, you are not supposed to be able to smell not a test object outside. They put something up to your nose, you're not supposed to smell it. So just so the public understands, it's not easy to mask fit.
Thank you. Thank you. That was good information. And, it is exactly right. We have different needs and different, special needs students that need different kind of accommodations. And so that's exactly right about why, their needs are different and why the teachers' needs are different.
Dr. Garcia, question or comment?
Yes, we didn't. I was wondering if Ms. Medina could answer Director Keating's second question around an estimation of enrollment. I believe that was the question, wasn't it? So I just didn't want to lose that. So I don't mean to put you on the spot, Ms. Medina, but can you give an estimation of our enrollment knowing that they're not finalized?
Thank you. So right now we're looking at our enrollment projections in comparison to the demographers' projections. And we look at them from a number of different forms. There's 100 different ways we can look at enrollment. But what we're seeing in our basic education is that we're down around 550 students. And that doesn't include Running Start or the Open Doors program and a couple of other smaller programs where the funding is different than what is occurring in the basic education world. But with all of our enrollment together, we're down about 165 students. And then just one statement to keep in mind, we do have, when we budget off of the demographer's projection, but we build in a contingency, and that contingency equates to around 140 students. So that helps to mitigate and offset any potential impact from the loss of revenue that we may see. It's also really early still. I mean, we've only been in school for 2 weeks in total. And so this is still a time where things are flexing, and our demographers projections are based off of October 1st. So I think, we'll have a better handle here in the next week or so as we roll into the October 1st timeframe, but just know that we are down, which isn't unexpected, but we're not seeing declines like we're seeing in some of the other local school districts or our comparator districts, because some of them are down thousands of students, 1,000 students or more.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I just have a couple questions/comments. One, what's your sense about, with regard to the initially planned opening for Monday? Do we have any feedback about families in those grade spans who initially opted for remote, they probably had some assumption about when we were likely to go back at all face to face. Do you have a sense at all from conversations or from anecdote about if the planned turn to face or planned rolling into the hybrid would have been at this point in time, that do you have a sense of how many of them wouldn't have made the choice to go Tacoma online? You know, like if we weren't going back into the hybrid until like November or December or January, what's your sense about how long it would have taken for families to feel comfortable rolling into the hybrid rather than going Tacoma online?
I think it's hard to tell. Josh may have more specific numbers, but I know that the mail and the phone calls have been, you know, a variety. And there certainly are parents who are not ready for their kindergartners, you know, to go into school, and but they're mostly talking about, you know, safety precautions. And so we've tried to respond with, hey, that's why I wanted Chris to get on today and talk about all the precautions that were being taken. I don't know if you have specific numbers, Josh.
I don't have specifics, but just give you some like rough estimates. If you take kindergarten for one, kindergarten enrollment overall is lower than it has been in years because families are choosing maybe not to send their students to kindergarten in the first place. But in Tacoma Online enrollment, when it was first started, let's just say hypothetically, we had around 325 kindergartners that wanted in. As we opened up schools in a remote fashion, many of those families chose to withdraw, and the numbers went down. But by the time you add the people back on the rolling wait list, we're right up to that original number. So it kind of is evened out that some families, and it's have said, you know, I've changed my mind when they got into it, and they said, no, I really do want to be in remote, or I don't plan on coming to Tacoma Online. And then other families, as it got closer, they were like, oh no, we really do want to be in Tacoma Online. So it's there are still a lot of families that would like to be in a remote setting. We hear those things, and there are still families that feel safer in a complete, they would like to be in a hybrid setting, ultimately getting face-to-face. And there are some of the families that are saying, no, I really need this. I think the superintendent could attest that a lot of school districts right now are scrambling with an online option. And so your foresight early on as a board to say, we want our kids to have that choice. You can see that there's a demand by the sheer volume. It has not gone off without its own hiccups. I would say that it is a growing thing. It is a challenge from a technology, from a new tech, from staffing to get registered, but we'll get going and kids will continue to learn. But without it, I think we would have been in a pretty catastrophic place.
Thank you for that. And your comment about kindergartners makes me think about the horrible Washington state law that doesn't put our compulsory attendance until age 8 for kindergarten. But if you do enroll your child in kindergarten, you have to keep them enrolled. So it doesn't sound like it's huge numbers, but your point about our kindergarten numbers being lower makes me wonder if folks are making decisions in their households to delay like the 5-year-old kindergarten start till like 6 years. So I just wonder what implications that has for kindergartners who will be starting next year that age-wise could have started this year, if there will be any of those students. No, you don't have to comment on that, but it's just a thought that came to mind as you were speaking.
I just would say that for those that are out there watching that and stuff, is that is not a wrong choice or a right choice. That is a personal choice for a family. And when you come to us next year at age 6, and you're a kindergartner, you're not, you haven't been held back. You haven't been put forward. You are just starting, and that's great. And we will be there for you, and we'll start you there. And you'll start your own individual education journey, and we will go from there. So families, if you're watching in there and at home, you're okay. Keep your family safe and go there. And when we get through this pandemic, or next year when you're ready to start with kindergarten, we'll start you there, and we'll take you and help you grow.
Thank you for saying that. That's in the back of my mind, just talking with a friend who's making this choice for her family. So that didn't come out in my comment. So thank you for saying that, Josh. The other just comment I would offer, and I'm always thinking in the policy and context, and like how can we advocate for things that we need? I just know from doing work at the state level on school funding for facilities maintenance, the funding model that's used to drive out FTE for custodians doesn't really take into account a state standard about how frequently we should be cleaning different parts of our schools. There's not this underlying standard, like once a day cleaning for kindergarten classrooms or once a day, and that drives out funding according to your kindergarten enrollment and that staffing. So I just thinking from the advocacy standpoint, I don't know if there's any will for this, and I know there's no money for it at the state level, but having some standards around cleaning that drive the funding for facilities maintenance, especially custodial maintenance, it seems like now is the time for that kind of conversation to come up in Olympia too. Like we've got to establish some thresholds for this. And then lastly, just on a happy note, I just want to share with the rest of you all that Superintendent Santorno alluded to a presentation that she was a part of earlier this week to the Gates Foundation. I had the opportunity to listen in on that presentation that also included Tafana Irvin from the Foundation for Tacoma Students and Tim Herron from Degrees of Change. And I just want to say, I was like beaming with pride at it was actually for Tacoma residents because the person who facilitated the conversation was also a Tacoma resident. So it was just great to see how much of a deep partnership clear that they have with one another, how they shared space and nobody in that conversation was taking credit for anything. They just all talked about collectively the experience of coming together and partnering on behalf of kids in Tacoma. And Superintendent Santorno in particular just did a great job of setting the stage for who we are in Tacoma. So I just wanted to share with you all that we were well represented in that presentation.
And that was a national presentation, correct?
It was to the Foundation's entire U.S. programs team, so people who are here and in other places, but all part of U.S. programs teams. Director Keating?
I just wanted to follow up on what Josh was saying around a rocky start. And in our house, we've had a lot of conversations about resetting expectations of what this is supposed to look like. We've had cheers. It's been really frustrating. And then the breakthrough. And I just want to acknowledge in one of my daughter's class, or she had a meeting with one of her teachers today, and I heard her teacher saying, just, you're not behind. Nobody's behind. It's okay. You're going to be okay. And we're going to do this together. And I know that as a parent, like I have that anticipation of like staying on top of it. And it's really been challenging to stay flexible and patient. And so I just want to acknowledge the teachers that, I can't imagine what your jobs are like right now. And the stress, and I know many of you personally. And so I just want to acknowledge how different this entire experience is, and want to thank our teachers for everything that they're putting in to connect with their students, because it really is making a difference. So I just wanted to acknowledge them.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you. Any further comments from members of the board on the topic of school reopening? Seeing none, we'll move to item 5, members of the public wishing to address the school board. And this is a long statement, so bear with me as I read it for the benefit of those who don't have access to the instructions at home, but are interested in providing comment in the future and need to know how to do it. So just to note, and I shared this in a previous board meeting, that we are following a new protocol related to public comment, given that we're meeting in this virtual context. So we have been up until now allowing members of the public to submit comments in writing that are posted and attached to the agenda items, and we have been reading the name of the commenter and the subject of their comment. But the board continues to explore other alternative ways of letting folks share their comments directly, so we'll continue to keep you updated. We continue to make improvements to this process moving forward. So 1, prepare a statement that will be attached to the board agenda and meeting minutes. 2, because this will be a public document, it's recommended that you prepare the statement in a separate document using an application such as Microsoft Word. At the top of the document, please identify yourself and the subject matter for your statement. Please do not include your phone number, address, or email address unless you want that personal identifying information included in the public. Submit your written statement via email to the school board secretary 24 hours prior to the start of the meeting. Statements submitted after the deadline will not be considered for this session. Statements should be emailed to tjones4@tacoma.k12.wa.us. Typically, the board allows up to 3 minutes for you to share your verbal comments. A 3-minute verbal statement converts to approximately 300 to 500 words or up to 2 pages double-spaced. Please limit your written statement to this guideline. During the meeting, the superintendent will read into the record your name and the subject matter of your statement. The members of the public, the superintendent will not read your statement aloud during the meeting. However, your statement will be linked to the agenda so that members of the public will be able to read your statement. Your statement will also be linked to the meeting minutes for future reference. And 8, members of the board will also review your written statement. The superintendent or her designee will follow up with you if action is needed. Just to reiterate, do receive these comments in advance. That's why we ask that you submit them 24 hours prior to the start of the meeting. So with that, Superintendent, will you please read the names of the public comments had submitted?
Yes, and a little departure from our regular procedure. We have about 15 statements, public comments to the board about Galt Middle School and the transfer from TPS to THA. And so I wanted to read a statement. I'll read all the names, and their comments are attached to the board agenda. But I just wanted to let people know, and you may have already gotten an email from one of our staff people. But as of September 23rd, 2020, after careful study and consultation, the Tacoma Housing Authority has decided not to pursue acquiring the Galt Middle School property from Tacoma Public Schools. A main reason for the Tacoma Housing Authority's decision is the large cost of responsibly securing and protecting the property while it awaited full redevelopment. These costs would have included demolishing the auxiliary buildings, buttoning up the original Galt School to prevent it further deterioration, and keeping it and the neighborhood safe. The COVID-19 pandemic has diminished the normal sources of financing for such work, and the pandemic also would have delayed the financing for the full redevelopment. We are disappointed by this well-informed decision. And so this process began early January 7th, 2020, and on that date, THA and TPS signed a non-binding letter of intent that contemplated the transfer of the property to THA. That letter permitted a THA a due diligence period to inspect the buildings and property, including environmental and engineering reviews. Those reviews allowed THA to fully appreciate the cost of acquiring the property and being a responsible steward of THA and TPS, and they also underwent a robust consultation effort. The community responses reflected impressive interest and insight into the value of the Galt School property, all informed by evident care and love for the neighborhood. These sentiments made this decision to forego further work to acquire the property especially disappointing. The Tacoma Housing Authority is disappointed to have to forego the chance to do that, at least for now. Moving forward, while Tacoma Public Schools was excited about the potential community benefits offered by the Tacoma Housing Authority's vision, the district still remains hopeful about finding a solution that benefits our community. Tacoma Public Schools will work closely with the city of Tacoma to identify next steps to further secure the site and determine an action plan for this property. We are both grateful for the partnership with TPS and THA, and we're grateful for the many Eastside community leaders and residents who helped us with their advice and views. Together, we are heavily invested in the Eastside and its well-being. We will remain alert for other chances to partner together in East Tacoma to help create safe, prosperous, and equitable communities. Those speaking are left to a public comment about Galt, Brett Larrabee regarding THA's interim strategy before project is constructed. Harley Thornhill regarding issues to consider for Dome Top neighborhood. Harley Thornhill, second comment. Dome Top Neighborhood Alliance regarding Galt School needs a rebirth. Emily Wilson regarding redevelopment and opportunity for the city to reinvest in the East Side. Hannah Miner regarding support of land transfer of Galt Middle School to THA. Janice and William Maddox regarding request intergovernmental transfer to THA be denied. Jennifer Kenyon Gentry and Randy Kenyon regarding transfer of Galt Middle School to THA. Joanne Babick regarding proposal for the use of Galt School. John Fraser regarding Galt Middle School. Joyce Glass regarding gifting of Galt to 2HA. Kim Hansen regarding concerning the intended property transfer and future use of Galt Middle School. Stacy Richard regarding neighbors want Galt Field to stay. Susan Shears regarding support for transfer of Galt Middle School to THA, and Verda Washington regarding ideas for Galt MS uses. And then additionally, we had one other public comment submitted, and that's from Elizabeth Wall regarding erroneous statement on the TPS website. So that completes the public comment.
Thank you, Superintendent Santorno. So moving on to item 6, the consent agenda. Is there a motion or 6? Yeah, 6 point. Sorry, yeah, 6 consent agenda. A motion to adopt the consent agenda.
I
Motion
so
to
move. I'll second it.
Just a second. Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion is adopted. Moving on.
I'm sorry, there was one, and I'm not really sure where to say it, but there was a typo in the minutes. So I don't know if that's gonna, if we've, in 6.1.a, Director, President Hines' name was misspelled twice in that. So I just wanted to make a note of that. So that was in 6.1a.
Thank you.
We'll correct that.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to item number 7, policy matters. 7.1, second reading of policy number 3424 in section 300, opioid related overdose reversal. Is there a motion to adopt?
I so move.
a second.
Wait,
Ye-
sorry, I should have waited for the description to be read.
That's okay. It was taking me a little long to get the camera clicked on. The Assistant Superintendent of K-12 Support recommends that the Board of Directors approve the second reading of policy number 3424 and section 3000 opioid related overdose reversal, funding source K-12 support. So I could say, before you have questions, I can maybe give you a little information. We have done some research on what you suggested last week, which was to extend it to the middle school. And I also heard something about elementary as well. So we're in the process of looking at that cost. We know that the donations are over. We're not going to get any more from Adapt Pharma or Fire Department. So we're going to have to pay for the doses that we have, and as well as the little box to put it in and the training. And actually the training's free. We don't have to pay for that, but other supplies that go along with it. So we were going to go forward with that. We're in the process of putting a budget together and then, bring that back to you at a later date. But this policy supports the RCW, which requires that we have Narcan at the high school level.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Are there questions from members of the board, Director or Vice President Bonbright?
Yeah, I didn't see the actual resolution attached. I don't know if it was changed from the last time. So I'm just wondering if I know, and I really appreciate the fact that we were approved, we've got the funding for the high school, so we want to get started on that. But does the resolution reflect our request that as a policy when we adopt it today, is it saying that we're going to be seeking to also do that for the middle schools at least, or is it moot on that point?
We have not changed the resolution from the way it was originally written.
Because understanding that we are going to adopt it to reflect the high school only to meet the obligations of current law. And as we get a plan in place to actually implement in the middle or elementary schools, we'd bring it back and adjust according to our implementation plan.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Director Leon?
And so if cost is an issue, it's just statistically, there are very few kids of primary school that will come in contact or need to be resuscitated for this. So if you're going to have it in elementary school, it's probably for potential staff member or a visitor that might be overdosed, or a nearby person. As many of you know now, there's AED shock units that are, in grocery stores and malls.
Right.
This is something we're thinking about in the same vein as AEDs. It should be really very accessible in the community throughout. So that would be a reason to have it there if cost is not a big barrier. So thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Director Leon's question or comment actually dovetails exactly with the way that I was starting to think about it when I pictured elementary school. It was like likely going to be an adult or someone older in the vicinity or in the school that needs it. So to your point exactly, I wondered, are there any logos that go along with the fact that there's like Narcan available on site? Are there any kind of
There's signage that goes along with it. It's very apparent in public. So yes, it does accompany it.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments or questions from members of the board? Okay, all those in favor of adopting item number 7.1 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is adopted. Okay, item number 8, financial matters. Presentations of the financial health of the district will be made during regular board meetings on a quarterly basis. Monthly financial statements can be found on the district website at www.tacomaschools.org/departments/budget/financial reporting. Item 9, curriculum and instruction.
Wait.
Oh, Director Bonbart?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that while we just have a new website that they're still in the process of transferring and updating old information and putting in new information. And if the public goes on right now, they may not find the most recent financials on there. So if you would like to see the most recent financials, you can send an email to CFO for Chief Financial Officer. So CFO@tacoma.k12.wa.us. And Rosalind Medina will make sure that you get the information you want, and then check back soon. I know there's a line for the tech group that's trying to get kids up online working, as well as get our website, which is less urgent than getting kids working on their online things. So thanks for being patient.
Instruction, there are no curriculum and instruction matters tonight. So item 10, business matters. 10.1, adoption of resolution number 2089, unlimited tax general obligation bonds 2020.
The Chief Financial Officer recommends that the Board of Directors adopt resolution number 2089, authorizing the superintendent and the chief financial officer to approve the final terms of the issuance, sale, and delivery of bonds.
Is there a motion to adopt?
I motion to adopt.
Is there a second?
I second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions or comments from members of the board? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Yes, it's a resolution. We should do a roll call vote.
Thank you, Ms. Trueblood. Okay. Will you
Yes,
please?
Yes, thank you. President Cobb?
Aye.
Vice President Bonbright?
Aye.
Director Leon?
Aye.
And Director Keating?
Aye.
The resolution passes 4-0.
Thank you. Item 10.2, adoption of resolution number 2090 regarding outstanding warrants.
The Chief Financial Officer recommends that the Board of Directors adopt resolution number 2090, canceling warrants that have remained outstanding for over 1 year.
Is there a motion to adopt?
I move to adopt.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments from members of the board? Ms. Medina, can you say how this is past year's warrants?
I'm sorry, can I say, I couldn't hear the question. My internet's starting to cut out.
I'm sorry, I was just wondering how this compares to previous years or to past years. Is this pretty much in line
Mark
with?
Greeno
is now exiting.
Sorry, I think that this is somewhat typical of what we've seen in past years. So I didn't go back and look at the prior year's submission, but we typically have a handful of these, and this was a little bit more than a handful, about a page and a half of unclaimed resources that we send off to the Department of Revenue.
And that becomes part of like the unclaimed property queue. Is that correct?
That's correct. And if you do believe that you have been included on this list, or you do think that you are owed cash by the district and it's no longer on our books, it can be claimed at www.claimyourcash.org.
Thank you. All those in favor of adoption? Oh,
It's a resolution.
Is
Thank
now
you.
exiting.
And please call the roll.
President Cobb,
Aye.
Vice President Von Bright,
Aye.
Director Leon,
Aye.
and Director Keating.
Aye.
The resolution
Lydia.
passes 4-0.
Is now exiting.
Thank you. And I knew this was resolution because I see your face. So thank you for that. And I also just reiterate, as a matter of a thing to do, I encourage everyone to go out to claimyourcash.com to look for yourself. I not many hours, but some time on that site, Googling everyone's name that I know and sending them a quick text to let them know they have something to claim. So if you haven't looked for yourself or your family members on there, I bet there's like a 16-year-old yourself savings account that you started that has $50 that you need to claim. So check it out. Okay. Item 10. Where are we? 10.3, adoption of resolution number 2091 to authorize the impending sale of the Rialto Garage.
The Chief Operating Officer recommends that the Board of Directors adopt resolution number 2091 and approve the sale of the Rialto Garage.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
Motion?
I so move.
Is there a second?
I second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments from members of the board? Seeing none, I'll go to Ms. Greenwood to call the roll.
Thank you. President Cobb,
Aye.
Vice President Von Bright,
Aye.
Director Leon,
Aye.
and Director Keating.
Aye.
The resolution passes 4-0.
Thank you. That was a long time coming.
Yeah.
Amen.
Hallelujah.
Number 10.4, approval of agreement with Pierce Transit for Orca card purchase for the 2020-2021 school year.
The Chief Financial Officer recommends that the Board of Directors authorize the Superintendent to negotiate and enter into an agreement with Pierce Transit for 7,900 Orca passport cards in an amount not to exceed $300,000 for the 2021 school year. Funding source Transportation Fund.
Thank you. Any questions from members of the board?
You have to move it.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adopt?
I so move.
I second.
I see Ms. Medina's hand, so I'll pause to see if she actually has the
I
comment.
do have a comment. Yes, I would just love to take a quick moment to thank our partners, Pierce Transit. They have been amazing partners this year. Specifically, I want to thank publicly Ryan Wheaton for all of his hard work, and Sue Dreyer for her work on ensuring that our students are able to access these cards. So, you know, it's the embodiment of partnership. It's amazing.
Thank you for that. Just one question for me. I understand, like during the beginning of the pandemic, public transportation was a part of like the marketing around essential travel only, and I don't know exactly how the messaging has shifted. I haven't paid as much classes and as I've passed them by. What's our expectation about use this year, given the still continued frequent prevalence of people staying home and our delayed start to high schools in particular, going back to school? What do we think about use?
About
I
use?
think that, yeah.
We anticipate there's going to be great need for our secondary students to use, not only for unique situations where they're coming on campus, but to access mental health services, jobs, activities, We still are running CT programs where there's workforce development opportunities. We feel pretty passionately that this is the right investment to allow our students to continue to connect and be supported in this world. So
Thank
I'll
you.
leave it at that.
I think social distancing on our buses would help with that as well. So potentially.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions, members of the board? Seeing none, all those in favor of adopting item 10.5, say, wait, 10.4, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion is adopted. Moving on to item 10. Oh,
President. Just a question. Is our student representative present for this meeting? If they are, just see if they have any comments as we go through the meeting.
I'm here. Hi.
Okay. Just when President, when you feel it's appropriate for comments, and then Jasmine, hopefully we can get some input from our student reps too.
Again, thank you for being here, Jasmine. And thanks for calling that out, Director Leon. Okay, item 10.5, approval of elementary and secondary school emergency relief fund grant.
Thank you. The Chief Financial Officer recommends that the Board of Directors approve acceptance of the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund grant from the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction in the amount of $8,277,138 and expenditure of funds in accordance with accepted guidelines. Funding source, Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adopt?
I move enthusiastically.
A second.
Been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments from members of the board? Okay, and just as a reminder for the public, we had a presentation in our last meeting. Was it our last? Yeah, about both this grant and the item 10.6 as well. So for some additional background information on either of these, if you're interested, please refer to that meeting's minutes or go to YouTube and watch the discussion on that platform. So hearing no further comments or questions, all those in favor of adopting item 10.5, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion is adopted. Item 10.6, approval of school assistance program grant for Pierce County.
The Chief Financial Officer recommends that the Board of Directors approve acceptance of the School Assistance Program grant from Pierce County in the amount of $750,000 and expenditure of funds in accordance with accepted guidelines. Funding source, Pierce County.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adopt?
I motion to adopt.
I second.
Been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments from members of the board? Seeing none, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is adopted. Item 10.7, approval of College Board contract for the 2020-2021 school year.
Real quickly shifting, the Deputy Superintendent on behalf of the Director of Data Assessment Research, DART, recommends that the Board of Directors approve College Board's College Readiness and Success contract in the amount of $200,912 for the 2020-2021 school year.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adopt item 10.7?
I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments from members of the board? Seeing none, all those in favor of adopting item 10.7, say aye.
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 Any
Aye.
opposed? Motion is adopted. Item 10.8, approval of contract with College Board for the advanced placement exam fees for the 2020-2021 school year.
The Deputy Superintendent on behalf of the Director of Data Assessment and Research Team, DART, recommends that the Board of Directors approve the College Board's Advanced Placement Program exam fees for the 2020-21 school year. Contract TSD 21-002 for the 2021 school year. Funding source, assessment budget.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adopt item 10.8?
I motion to adopt.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, all those in favor of adopting item 10.8, say aye.
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 Any opposed? The item passes. Item 10.9, approval of highly capable comprehensive program plan, acceptance of grant funds for the 2020-2021 school year.
Thank you. The Assistant Superintendent of K-12 Support, on behalf of the Director of School Programs, recommends that the Board of Directors approve the highly capable comprehensive program plan and acceptance of grant funds from September 1st, 2020 through August 31st, 2021. Funding source, Office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adopt item? We already see, no. Is there a motion to adopt item 10.9?
Motion to adopt.
Is there a second?
I second.
Any questions or comments from members of the board? I have one question. I remember a couple of years ago with the highly capable program law changes, there was I don't know if it was a requirement or a encouragement language that was put into the law that encouraged or required districts to do more to target enrollment of like I think it was low income students. I think that was the target that was called out because just recognizing some disparities in enrollment in past years. Can you say a little bit about our approach to identifying students for the highly capable program and how we've gone about addressing those kind of specific concerns that were raised in the law?
Yes, you know what? I see that Director Krista Erlin is on with us. So Krista, do you want to go over the testing piece and how we use that information to get the grant?
Sure. Good evening. One of the ways that we reach out and try to connect with more students and to recruit a more diverse student population is through the screening that we do in second grade. So we screen all of our second graders. We also do some earlier identification if we see some talent, some interest, some accelerated learning needs even earlier. And we start to support those children, then we screen all of our second graders so that we're not just doing it by a referral, but we're going out and just looking for that potential in all of our kiddos.
Thank you for that.
We also, if folks are ever wanting to do a self-nomination or their self-nominations, their family nominations or mentor nominations are also accepted in that early identification, as Director Erlin mentioned. So if you know a talented young youth that is traditionally underrepresented, please let us know and we will make sure that they go through that process as well.
I just think for the public to know that it sounds like a no-brainer that we test all of our second graders, but historically that has not been the case for these programs. Like we test all kids at the end of the year, the Smarter Balance, but that's not how in many other districts historically testing to identify students for highly capable programs have happened. It's been referral here, referral there, and a handful of kids get tested. So just with that add of a universal screener, that is a step towards ensuring more equity and more representation in the program. So I think that's great to hear.
Your academic acceleration policy is also a part of your gifted and talented program as you get into the adult, in the higher grade levels. And so you're really targeting students at various levels throughout the system through that policy as well.
Yeah. I just want to say too, from my perspective, and maybe I hope you all agree, like being gifted isn't like you're exceptional in all areas and you're this like special little being. We all have our gifts. So I just think that connotation sometimes gets misunderstood. It's like you have to be great at everything in order to be potentially a great candidate for this program. I don't think it's that. It's just about identifying those talents and being able to nurture them in whatever area they're in. So I'll stop there and ask if there are any other comments from members of the board. Okay, hearing none, all those in favor of adopting item 10.9, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is adopted. Item 10.10, approval of the interlocal agreement between the University of Washington and Tacoma Public Schools for the 2020-2021 school year.
Thank you. The Assistant Superintendent, on behalf of the Executive Director of Secondary Education, recommends that the Board of Directors approve the interlocal agreement between University of Washington and Tacoma Public Schools for college and the high schools from September 1, 2020 through June 30th, 2021.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adopt item 10.10?
I move to adopt.
Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments from the board?
Question.
Director Leon?
Yeah, wondering as funding for entering the classes, is there anything changing, or what's the status of funding kids, being able to pay for kids that don't have the money to enroll in these classes and take their tests? We do fund the kids for the AP program, and there is some discussion within our district about what makes some kids more successful in some environments and some of these college level classes. Can you give us an update as to how it's going? Funding?
Sure. I'll take you some of the action steps that we took as a team based on some of the direction. Last legislative session, we worked to address the inequities of colleges charging different rates and not the same rates across institution, as well as similar to other states. Utah has a model, is a model state where where Utah has really worked to limit what universities are charging. So we worked to create a common funding source within the state budget. Unfortunately, our legislation didn't move forward. We recognize college can also charge a lower fee or no fee at all. The state law requires or allows that. So we plan on continuing to go down that road again, including limiting registration fees and fees for consumables to work in the next legislation session. Similar to AP and IB, any eligible student in the college and high school that chooses not to pay for college credit but still completes the course can be granted the same course title if they earn a C or better. So we tried to really demystify that, even if you're taking the class and you're successful and you cannot afford it, you can still be transcripted with that course. There was competitive grants available for districts in regards to that eligibility. It changed. It changed last year. Unfortunately, only high schools in Washington located more than 20 miles from a college offering Running Start or receiving small high school funding were eligible to apply for the college and the high school. So none of our TPS students high schools were able to meet that criteria. That was pretty significant change and a surprise. And the general essence is that you can access Running Start if there is a college that close to you. And so that's how they were trying to take those limited resources. We have had some optimism for this year that OSPI hopes to release a new competitive opportunity in October and November called the Equitable Dual Credit Expansion that could support dual credit costs for students and families with that equity lens. So we're eagerly watching that, waiting for that to come out to try to remove those barriers. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we're planning this to be one of our legislative actions again this year to lower those costs and remove those barriers for students.
So as you said, the geographic barrier is there because they assume you could do the Running Start. What is the cost for Running Start? Does that vary by where they go, or is there a cost?
No, it is a funding model, so students can access that, and then there is an apportionment that their basic education apportionment that comes to us would go to the community college to pay for those costs. Okay. There's some costs in class fees and a variety of things, but there's also opportunities to reduce those. So that is a viable option for students that are looking for credit in there. The main point is that we're not giving up on removing some of those barriers. We think there's value in college and the high school. But that's one of the options, there, and there continues to be challenges with those. The costs are significantly higher. And we have to work to try to remove or lower those costs for families.
Thanks.
Dr. Keating?
Yeah, I just had a clarifying question from Dr. Garcia about, you had mentioned fees and consumables. Can you define what consumables means in this context?
Well, it would vary based off of the course syllabus, to be candid with you. So you might have a consumables, which in essence, it may be a poor example maybe is a workbook, if you will. It may be a lab book where you're filling in, you're writing in that it's consumed during the course of the study. It is not a chance to check it back in. It is a one-time use, if you will. There may be lab fees associated for a consumable. You might be in an advanced bio class, and forgive me if I butcher this, you might have a mini pig or a mini frog, right? You can't reuse that in an advanced lab setting. And so those would be consumables that are often forwarded on to the individual student.
Thank you. I know education language is its own language and not everyone has the key to deciphering that. So I appreciate that.
I immediately thought of Rosetta Stone when you said the word decipher. So thank you for the clarifying questions. So any other comments from members of the board? Okay, all those in favor of adopting item 10.10, say aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion is adopted. Item 10.11, approval of increase in purchase order to Washington State Employment Security Department.
The Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources recommends the increase in the purchase order for the Washington State Employment Security Department for total expenditures of $785,000 during the 2019-20 school year.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adopt item 10.11?
A motion to adopt.
Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Ms. Nolan, can you say a little bit about how this has been impacted this year as a result of COVID or other kind of dynamics that are at play?
Yeah, absolutely. You may recall that on May 14th, I came to you to ask for an increase in the invoice to $500,000. We anticipated that would cover the cost. From approximately the 2016-2017 school year, our costs for unemployment rates have hovered around a couple $100,000 each year, give or take. But the pandemic has absolutely impacted that. We have our non-regular employees, our substitute employees who no longer had work to do after the schools closed. So this has absolutely impacted that. Our current bill to close out the 2019-2020 school year is approximately $785,000. And that's not even to get us into this current school year. So you will likely see in the very near future at an upcoming school board a request for this school year as we enter into supporting the costs related to our unemployment fees.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments from members of the board? Seeing none, all those in favor of adopting item 10.11, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is adopted. Thank you, Ms. Nolan. Item 12.12, approval of settlement agreement and release with Tacoma Jody Miller Construction Incorporated.
Thank you. The district's general counsel recommends that the board of directors, pursuant to District Resolution 6500R, adopt the settlement agreement between the district and Jody Miller Construction.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adopt item 10.11?
I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and second. Any questions or comments from the board? Okay, seeing none. Is this indeed a resolution? I can't.
We had a misstatement when it says resolution on the agenda. It's really a settlement agreement.
Okay, so a roll call vote is not required.
Not required.
Okay. All those in favor of adopting item 10.12, say aye.
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 Opposed? The motion is adopted. Okay. Moving on to item 11, other business. Item 11.1, ratification of the 2019-2022 collective bargaining agreement between Tacoma School District Number 10 and the membership of the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 302, custodians.
The Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources recommends that the Board of Directors ratify the collective bargaining agreements between Tacoma School District Number 10 and the membership of the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 302, custodians.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adopt item 11.1?
I move to adopt.
I second.
Been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments from members of the board? Seeing none, all those in favor of adopting item 11.1, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is adopted. So item 11.2, approval of school board candidates to interview for appointment to vacant position. So as many members of the, well, I'll let you read the introduction, General Counsel Trueblood.
Thank you. The General Counsel recommends that the Board of Directors select candidates to be interviewed in an open public meeting.
Thank you. So as many of you who follow us know, at the end of August, former Director Hines resigned his seat on the board. So his resignation triggers the need for the remaining school board members to interview and appoint a new member to serve alongside us. So we put a call for applications out to the community, and that call for applications ended on September, blanking on the date now.
11th.
Thank you. September 11th, we received, I believe, 9 applications total. The board met previously in executive session to review the candidates of the applicants that we received. In this executive session context, the board doesn't make any decisions about who we want to interview. We just talk collectively about what we think we would need in terms of complementary skills on the board and just generally how the candidates, as we see it, met those qualifications, and not that they're qualifications that you need to meet a certain mark, but just in this context, we have the opportunity to think about what we would benefit from trying to get in a new member to work with us as a team. So following that discussion, the next steps in the process is this action item that we're taking tonight for individual members of the board to recommend candidates from that list of applicants that we move into an interview phase. So at this point, I plan and hope to call for nominations from members of the board for candidates that we'd like to interview. I think we'll take candidate nominations one by one. So I'll just go around kind of in order, asking you if you have a recommendation of a candidate from those who applied that you would like to interview, and we can take individual votes on each of those candidates. Ms. Trueblood, is there anything you would add or clarify or recommend?
No, I think you did it perfectly. All the 9 candidates who applied are listed on the agenda item.
Thank you for that. So yes, members of the public, if you're interested in knowing who applied, their names are listed there. So I'll just start, I'll probably go in the order of Vice President Bonbright, then to Director Keating and Director Leon, and just call for individuals that you'd like to see us interview. So Director Bonbright, is there a candidate among the list of and I should say in advance that the order that these names appear does not reflect any order of our preference or any sort of ranking that we achieve. So this is just members of the board individually offering a name among the names that they'd like to see move forward. So Director Bonbright, do you have a nomination for a candidate that you'd like to see interviewed?
I do. Ronald Gordon.
So Ronald Gordon has been proposed as a candidate to interview. Is there a second to that nomination?
I second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Oh, I don't think we get into discussion at this stage. I'll just go straight to a vote. So it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of moving Mr. Gordon to the interview phase, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Mr. Gordon will move forward. Director Keating, do you have a candidate that you would like to nominate?
Yeah, I would like to nominate Melody Rodriguez.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so moved and seconded. All those in favor of interviewing Ms. Rodriguez, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion is adopted. Director Leon, is there a candidate that you'd like to see interviewed?
Yeah, I'd like to nominate Farrington Cador.
Okay, is there a second to that nomination?
I second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of moving Ms. Cador to the interview phase, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, I guess it's, I'll go to myself, I guess. I'd like to nominate Corey Strozer to be interviewed. Is there a second to that?
I second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, I'll go circle back to Director Bond, right? Are there additional candidates that you'd like to recommend that we interview that haven't already been received in nomination?
Nope, I think I'm good. Thanks.
Director Keating, do you have any further candidates to nominate?
Yeah, I'd like to nominate Wilton Waverly.
Is there a second to that nomination?
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, that motion is adopted. Director Leon, any further nominations?
No further.
And I too don't have any further. So Ms. Trueblood, I feel like you might have been keeping track of where we landed. Do you mind reading back for the record who we are moving to interview?
Yes, the board has nominated 5 candidates to move forward from the application phase to the interview phase. Those candidates are Ronald Gordon, Melody Rodriguez, Barrington Cador, Corey Strozier, and Wilton Waverly. And we've set aside 2 dates for interviews, the 28th of September and the 1st of October. The board was intending to spend more time with candidates with this appointment. So the board secretary, Ms. Tracy Jones, will be following up with candidates to schedule those interviews.
Thank you. So members of the public, I think for a matter of process, these interviews are intended to be made available to the public. So we will record these interviews and post them shortly after we conclude with the candidates on October 1st. And I should say, just for additional context, in a face-to-face meeting context that we are not in, we would have the opportunity for members of the public to come and observe the interviews live, but given that we're still operating in this remote context, we still want to make the conversations available to you, so we'll be posting them after they occur. Okay, moving on to item 12, reports to the board. 12.1, benchmark annual early learning preschool.
Good evening, President Cobb, Vice President Bombright, and members of the board. Next slide, please.
We don't have the slides quite up. Just 1 second.
Okay, we'll just wait a minute for our friend Tom. There we go. So next slide, please. Tonight I am here to present to you the annual report on Goal 3, Early Learning Benchmark, on the number of students being served in preschool for the 1920 school year. So this is enrollment for last school year, and this is an annual report. Next slide, please. It is the mission of our early learning department to support and serve our youngest learners to reach their highest developmental levels, both socially and academically, as well as empowering families to participate in their child's first years of education. Next slide, please. In the 2019-2020 school year, we had 67 classrooms serving students in 6 unique preschool programs, covering common curriculum in order to prepare students for success in kindergarten and beyond. Next slide, please. Now I'd like to share with you some of the key findings represented in the data on the next 2 slides. For our public watching at home, the key findings are also outlined on a separate slide in this presentation. Our data shows a decline in preschool enrollment of approximately 85 students. This is in part due to the change in our Head Start program grant. You'll remember we moved from 29 half-day classes to 20 full-day classes in the fall of 2019. This reduced approximately 200 slots for the Head Start program. The difference that you see in enrollment is due to the growth that we continue to see in our special education preschool program. Since our ECAP and Head Start programs have a fixed number of slots due to federal and state funding, the program where we see the most fluctuation or increases is in our special education program. Next slide, please. This data chart shows that the student groups for Black, multi, and Hispanic students represent a larger percentage of enrollment in the preschool programs compared to the overall district enrollment. And you'll see the data table there in the gray section shows OSPI's district data for the 2019 school year. There were some small changes in the other student groups, and this is common to see from year to year in our preschool data enrollment trends. Next slide, please. These are the key findings that I have just referenced in the past two slides. Next slide shows some of our next steps. Yeah, there we go. We consolidated our 6 title preschool classrooms for the 2021 school year due to the impacts of COVID. We will re-examine this decision once we know more about how we will start the 2021 school year. All of our students who are already in that program as 3-year-olds moving to 4-year-olds were moved into slots in our peer program, our peer model program. So all students that were already enrolled continue to be enrolled this year. The Building Connections professional development opportunity that we offer in collaboration with the district and childcare providers and families will continue. It's just going to continue in a virtual format. And our first one will be in October, and then hopefully we'll continue face-to-face at some point in the future. When and if slots become available for our ECAP program, we will apply for those slots as they become available. Those are called expansion slots. And we never quite know when or if there will be additional availability, but if there is, we always are one of the first to raise our hand and ask for those additional slots so that we're able to serve more students. We were hoping to begin on Monday bringing preschoolers back, and we will remain flexible as we are working to be ready. And currently we are serving students in a remote fashion. Students are receiving receiving instruction from their teachers, as well as hands-on learning activities to do at home. And once we are able to bring students back, we're very excited and eager to do that, but want to do so safely. Once we are able to bring students back, we will be bringing them back first in a cohort model. So we'll be bringing half in on a couple days and then half the other days. With 3- and 4-year-olds, we want to give them some time to adjust to being into the classrooms, understanding the social distancing guidelines, understanding how to move about the classroom and engage in activities. And then as we feel students are ready, then we'll add more time to get up to the 4 days of preschool per week. This is our first fall, another key finding, of using the same enrollment process as our K-12 program. We've been very grateful to our student information systems, to our student information department, enrollment department, for bringing us on board. And of course, anytime something new happens, there's some growing pains. So we're continuing to work closely with our enrollment department to make any adjustments to better serve our families in enrollment. And with our current COVID-19 landscape, as it is expected, we've seen lower enrollment numbers this fall in some programs, while others are nearing close to capacity. We're working to fill all of our open spaces, and we're closely monitoring our special education enrollment to confirm the growth trend that we've seen in the last 4 years. We'll continue to partner closely with our public information office to advertise and recruit students for the remaining open spaces. And I'd just like to say that we do have enrollment opportunities still available. We have approximately 200 openings in our Head Start program, about 65 in our ECAP program, approximately 50 openings or 15 less students at this point in our special education programs, and about 20 openings in our peer program. So families who might be listening to this at home, our application is online by going to the Tacoma website, entering early learning. You'll see the application can all be done online, and our programs are income eligible. So you'll want to take a look at that and apply if indeed you're looking for preschool opportunities for your student. The appendix has some data slides from our past years, and that's just for reference only for our board so they can have some comparative data. And that's the end of my presentation tonight. Are there any questions?
Thank you. Are there any questions from members of the board? Director Bonbright?
Yeah, Maria, I just had a question about the last thing you were talking about the availability. So is this, do you, 200 slots in Head Start seems like a lot. So I'm just wondering, is that 3 and 4-year-old slots or, okay.
Yes.
And so, and you think that the reason is because of the COVID closures, people were uncertain about it, or I'm just wondering what we're thinking about making sure these kids get in programs.
Right. It's a great question. I do have Assistant Director Michelle Raw-Lewis on with us tonight too, but I will go ahead and just say, I think you're exactly spot on, Director Bonbright. I think that families we're not sure what it was going to look like as we opened school, and maybe weren't certain, the opportunities that would be provided. Typically this time of the year, we are full with waiting lists. So we believe it is, to the current conditions. That's why I would love to encourage families who are out there who may be listening, or people who know families who have preschool age children, to please jump on and apply. While we are doing preschool remotely, and for some families, they might be saying to themselves, how would you ever engage a 3 or 4-year-old remotely in preschool? And we're seeing some really shining examples of that with our Head Start and ECAP and special education preschool teachers, developing, fun and interactive kind of little PowerPoints and sways, to hands-on materials that we're providing to families in backpacks with different activities that families can engage with their child. And then we're hoping, as soon as we're able to clear up the mask concerns, that we're going to have our students back in classrooms, and starting, like I said, with 2 days and then moving to 4 days, just as soon as we build a capacity with our children to get there. So we want our little ones back in school, and we'd love to get all of those spots filled, and we're confident that we will. I believe as soon as families start to see us coming back and see that it is safe, as it will be safe. Our staff has taken so many precautions and done so much work to be prepared. And I think they're just as disappointed as our families are that they don't get to see these little faces in person on Monday. So we believe we'll fill those spots and spread the word.
So it sounds to me like people should apply now, because there are offerings, which is, I think, probably what folks didn't realize, is that there are offerings in a remote setting that can help them actually help prepare the student to come back. So great, thanks for that.
Yes.
And I see Director Keating's hand up, but I just want to piggyback on a comment that you said, Marie, that when I was going to I feel like the last Head Start Policy Council meeting that I attended was face-to-face. Well, one of the last was face-to-face, but it was just as we had kind of knew we needed to close for a period of time because of the initial response to COVID. And I heard some very early examples of positive innovations that teachers were implementing to use digital platform, like using tablet, using alternative approaches really early on and right away, as we were kind of scrambling in the spring to pivot, and the K-12 and the rest of the system. I just can't imagine with some more time to plan the kinds of innovations that the teachers are coming up with. So it's good to hear that pattern has continued into the fall. So thank you.
Yes, Assistant Director Raul Lewis just sent me an email just this evening, and I was taking a peek at it, trying to stay focused, but some really, really wonderful examples of interactive sways and things that our teachers, and sway and that educational jargon, sway is another term for, it's a Microsoft product, but it's like a PowerPoint. So we will work to put a couple of those examples in a Friday report for you, so that you can have some smiles on your face too, as you see some of the incredible work of these preschool teachers. I am truly proud and indebted to them, and to Director Krista Erlin, who's heading up our special education preschool classrooms. And like I said, Assistant Director Michelle Raul Lewis, they're working really hard, and we were geared up, and we're hoping to be able to bring kiddos back. But again, we want to make sure we're doing that in the right environment that's safe for both our educators and our students and families.
Thank you. Director Keating?
Yeah, I was curious about outreach, given that the conditions that we're in. Like, are there ways that that outreach is being done so families know outside of, I mean, not everyone watches these meetings.
Mm-hmm.
So how are families receiving this information?
That's a great question. I'd like to bring up Assistant Director Michelle Raul Lewis, because she has some really specific examples. So can we just have her come up for a minute, and she can share a couple of our, what we would call recruiting techniques, or recruiting things that we're doing. Are you there, Michelle?
I am here. Good evening. Thank you for having me. Yes, our family advocates who are in charge of recruitment are doing some amazing things. They are still doing that we call pound the pavement recruiting. They are going to our local businesses and putting up flyers around early learning for Tacoma. They are going and putting flyers on cars in our neighborhoods, door to door to families, to ensure that they know that these learning opportunities are happening still for the children in the Tacoma School District and our neighboring areas. We are also just really promoting using our fabulous PIO office to blast Facebook, using social media, using all of the tools and techniques that the Public Information Office is offering to us to get the word out that yes, we do still have openings, and that your preschool student, once enrolled, will receive the opportunity to have some remote learning and have some hands-on backpack tools that will be given to families to keep that engagement going.
We also work through our local pediatricians as well, and make sure that they know that there are places that that we're still have enrollment slots available. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you for the presentation. Oh, Director Leon?
Since you mentioned pediatricians, please don't forget about the family physicians. They see a ton of small children also. So those practices are family medicine. If you're doing the pediatricians, you might as well hit the family physician offices.
Okay, great. Thank you for the heads up.
Thanks. Okay. Well, we will move on to item 13, announcement of future board meetings. So Monday, September 28th, the board will meet at 6:30 for a special meeting to conduct interviews with potential school board director candidates. On Thursday, October 1st at 6 p.m., we will have a similar meeting to interview the remaining candidates. On Thursday, October 8th at 6 p.m., the board will meet for our regular business meeting. And then on Thursday, October 15th at 6 p.m., we'll meet for a study session. Item 14, board comments and reports. Just for a turn tonight, I'd like to start with our student representative. Jasmine, if you're still hanging in there with us, we'd love to hear any comments you have, thoughts about the opening of school year, anything else on your mind that you think that we should hear about. So if you're there, Jasmine, we'd love to hear from you tonight.
I don't have anything really major to report. Nothing. I think everyone's still trying to find their footing. So mainly what I've been seeing is just trying to transition to our new learning platform, Schoology versus Teams, and trying to figure that out. I know that a lot of students took the SAT yesterday. And also I was just really happy to hear about the Orca cards, because I wasn't sure if we were getting them this year. So that was really exciting to hear. Yeah, but that's it.
Thank you, Jasmine. Any questions or comments for Jasmine, from members of the board? No, well, again, I'm just going to keep telling you that we're glad that you're here. As you hear things from your peers that you think need to be lifted up, please keep us in mind and bring those comments to us. If you think of ways too that we can, I don't know, maybe I'm offering new work, but think about the ways of connecting with your peers even more systematically, please keep those ideas coming too. Okay, I'll go to members of the board. I'll start with Vice President Bombright. Any comments or reports tonight?
Yes, I've actually got a few committee reports. First, on September 11th, the JMAC, which is the Joint Municipal Action Committee, met, and this is a group of made up of elected officials from 6 different public entities. It's the Port of Tacoma, City of Tacoma, Pierce County, Tacoma Public Schools, and the Puyallup Tribe. And am I forgetting anybody? Oh yeah, the Tacoma Metro Parks and Metro Parks Tacoma. And so we meet once a month, and we usually have these great conversations on how we collectively can, because we're all serving the same families and in the same communities, and how we can work together and leverage our resources and our thinking strategically. And this meeting was exciting because we voted to invite Pierce Transit to join JMAC, to be a new entity on JMAC. So there'll now be 7 of us, 7 entities. And then most of the time was spent with the City of Tacoma presenting on their anchor institution work, which for those who may not know, the anchor institution work is kind of a model that is available in like 54 other communities across the country. And Tacoma's been doing it for about 3 years, and the anchor institutions are the same as the ones in JMAC, JMAC plus our institutions of higher education, so like UW and the community colleges. And what's great about it is they are focusing on in specific work on investing in existing community infrastructure, and so they're trying to hire local and procure locally. And actually it was great for me to hear this because it really made sense from some of the reports we've been getting from as I've been a board member about how we've got these targets as board members and as a school system for minority and local contractors and the different ways we buy and spend money to keep it local. And I see now that that's part because we're part of the Anchor Institution Project. So that was great to hear. And we had a really interesting conversation on how we might expand that conversation to be broader than just, at this point, it's just procurement and how we can hire locally and procure locally. And we're trying to figure out how to expand that and be a bigger player. The next meeting is October 9th, and the focus on that meeting will be on aligning our collective legislative agendas, or our individual organizational legislative agendas, to make sure we have a collective impact. And talking a little bit about our progress on equity, how we as institutions are moving forward on our plans and our goals. So that's in a month. The second meeting, this was just actually on Wednesday, was the Tacoma Public Schools Citizens Audit and Finance Committee. We meet quarterly. And I just wanted to point out that you heard a lot about what we talked about today. Is we talked about the bonds and the financials and all of that. But I'm pretty impressed with that group for a lot of reasons, mostly because it's mostly members from the community. There's 7 members on the board currently, and 5 of them are community members from playing various roles, financial auditors, different people in the community that are keeping an eye for us on the TPS Tacoma Public Schools financials to make sure that we're moving in the right direction. And so I want to thank all those community partners who come and sit on that committee and spend a lot of time going over numbers. It's been it's fascinating, but it does show that Tacoma Public Schools wants to be transparent about our financials and that we want input from community. So that's a good working group. I'm also on a weekly local elected officials call where local elected officials from all over Pierce County get together and we talk about the COVID responses and what we all can do to help and leverage each other. And Those are always fascinating and very timely conversations about how we can support each other. And we've had some great movement because of those conversations. Also on a weekly call with the Washington State School Directors Association, they have a weekly webinar for the same thing, talking about how school districts can benefit from sharing best practices and in creative ways of approaching the COVID situation, and have learned a lot about that, which I've passed on, and as along with Director Keating, who's also sits on those weekly meetings. And so those have been great. And then the one other meeting that I just had this week as well was with Project Child Success, which is actually a program from First Five Fundamentals here in Pierce County. It's a collaborative, basically a movement to improve the well-being of children and families in Pierce County. And it's a group of community partners who've come together to achieve a vision that all children thrive and nurture relationships and environments. And so what we do is we meet monthly and we talk about what we as partners can do to leverage supports and services for families and young children, and get them resources, and we share ideas, and we share, we co-design projects and programs, and advocate for policies that support children and families. And the focus of this month's meeting was really about the Help Me Grow program, which many of you may know about, which is for Pierce County, and it's got a specific legislative a set aside that is actually be running out. So there's working on trying to remind people that we need to get that state proviso in this next session. And then we talked a lot about the legislative agenda and how we can collectively work on equity issues and other issues. So that's for me what was going on with committee reports and community events. And then also I took advantage of the National School Board Association Council of Urban Boards of Education just had a conference this week. It was Tuesday through Thursday, and I know President Cobb is also actually serves as on the steering committee for the CUBE. It's called CUBE. It's the Council for Urban Boards of Education. So thank you for all your guidance for making this such a great conference. It really, I participated in a couple of sessions and learned a lot about what others were doing to track students. And I've talked with the deputy superintendent about some of what I learned and how we shared. And I'm hoping that a lot more, that maybe our Tacoma Public Schools can be more upfront about and forward, nationally, to present some of the great things we found. Because I heard a lot of people thinking, talking about things that they can't figure out how to maybe do. And I'm thinking, we do that. So hopefully we can get on and present on Tacoma can step up. So that's it for me this month.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for Director Bombright? Okay, seeing none, I'll go on to Director Keating. Any comments or reports tonight?
The only thing that I would share is tomorrow I'm participating in the WASDA, the state's School Director Association, in their legislative assembly. So I'm the voting delegate. And we start bright and early tomorrow morning. So that'll be my first experience, and doing a parliamentary experience all day on a Zoom setting or a virtual setting will be quite fascinating. So I'll have more to share about that at our next meeting.
Thank you for representing us.
Yep.
Make sure you have some nice snack-like fuel next to you to keep yourself going. Thank you. Director Leon?
Thanks. Yeah, I think we've started, let the public know we've started very preliminary, just early discussion with the superintendent and our president here around trying to do some investigation into the future if testing of students asymptomatically at our schools is something we want to explore and do to help keep students and teachers, so testing teachers and students when they're asymptomatic for COVID, something that has a lot of barriers and would be something we would need support from community partners on. So I think that's something that has support from many scientific institutions, specifically most recently the Duke University and the Kellogg Foundation have been instrumental in some studies and some papers on this topic. So it's something that we're going to discuss at future meetings. Also like to just just kind of pay homage a little bit to a pillar of our community, Harold Moss, who passed away this week. Many of you in the community know him. He's just a giant, instrumental in working in NAACP, started the Urban League here, was city councilman, county councilman, mayor, and just did so much of the community. So our thoughts are with his family, and we thank him and his family for all his hard work. This is also Hispanic Heritage Month. So it's Hispanic and Latinx Heritage Month. Over 50 years that's been present. Obviously, Latinx people have been present in this continent for a lot longer than that. The theme of that is pride in the past and embrace the future. So a veces tenemos que recordar la historia y tenemos que dar un abrazo al futuro para tener orgullo en lo que tenemos que hacer como una comunidad latina y que todos pueden sobrevivir los problemas que tenemos acá en el mundo. And I'd like to, and then the other, just more of a comment or question. I think it's in the near future, probably worth our discussion as a board as to when we feel like we're going to be starting our in-person meetings. I think there's been some preliminary discussions around that, but in the near future, I think it'd be good to discuss that. Thanks.
Thank you. So for me, I would just say that I want to build off of Derek Leon's comments about the passing of Mr. Moss to me. I think that this 2020 has just been relentless in many ways. There's been a lot of opportunities for innovation, I'll say, but then, and I'll try to frame that positively, but then there's also just been a lot of loss this year. So for me, and I think the passing of Mr. Moss is like just one of those things. Like I remember his smile. He is always so happy to see me, and I'm sure everybody who knows him feels that way about their interactions with him. He's a very positive person, optimistic, hopeful, in spite of the fact that he's been through and seen lots of challenge in the world and been an advocate on the side of good through all of that. So in spite of going through all that challenge and needing to advocate in spaces where he was paving the way, he still managed to always show nothing but like warmth and optimism and a spirit of like, we can do it. In every interaction that I had with him. So I know that his loss is significant and felt by many members of the community. And just in this time of COVID, when we have to keep our distance and to limit large gatherings, it's just kind of a point of sadness for me that we can't honor his legacy together right away. I'm sure that something will be planned in the future where we can all gather, hopefully, to celebrate his life and to honor his legacy. But it is a really sad passing. I have some great pictures of both Mr. Moss and Karen Vial from when I was running for school board. So I really will treasure those pictures and the memories for a long time. So thank you for offering that, and just my heart's with everyone who's grieving his loss. In terms of committee reports, I don't have a ton to report. My last committee meeting was the Foundation for Tacoma Students Board, and I had an opportunity to report on that in our last meeting. So I will just end there. So if there are no further comments from members of the board, I'll move on to item 15 and call us adjourned. Thank you.
Good evening. Have a good night.
Good night.
Thanks all.
Good night.